In this video, I'm going to show you a few different kinds of factoring in the same video, just so you can kind of see the difference altogether. And specifically, these are the types I'm going to do. I'm going to do factoring with greatest common factor only, and then I'm going to use some grouping factoring. And then also I'm going to work with trinomials where your lead term is 1x squared, and then when it is not 1x squared. And then also where you might see a GCF and then one of those two. So GCF would be what you'd always check for first, and so that's why I'm going to kind of have a combination of those as well. So here are, in this video, I hope I can get through all 10 in the same video. It might be a longer one, but here are some examples, so just kind of my thinking out loud and processing when I see a problem, what do I kind of look for first? And so when I look at number one and my direction is factor, noticing that I have multiple letters, just A and B, what would clue me in would be that it would be a GCF only. For grouping, this one you need to have 4 terms. And since I don't see 4 terms, I know it's not going to be grouping. And then because I'm not dealing with a 3 term, both of these are 3 terms. And generally, but not always, you want to look for something like an x squared or like 2x squared or 3x squared, but it's going to be a number x squared, and that's not what I see here. So grouping is out, a equals 1 and a is greater than 1 is probably out, so GCF would be what I think here. For this one, I want to think about what every single number is divisible by. I notice these are all multiples of 5. And then also for the letters, the power on the letter is what I want to really look at. The 8, the 5, and the 3, the powers that you see on the A. The lowest power is what you can take out of every term. So a cubed. And then for the letter B, the lowest power that you see on those letters, so since I see just one B, so think of it as b to the first, is what I'm going to take out as a GCF from this problem. So now what I'm going to do is actually divide it out. So my factor of 5, a cubed b, is going to be taken out, and then I'm going to write down what remains. So factoring isn't just the dividing, it's writing out that this is the factor you took out and then what remains in parentheses. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. A to the 8th divided by a cubed, I'm going to take 8 minus 3, which is going to give me 5. And then b cubed divided by 1b, if I have 3 b's and I cancel one away, I'm left with a b squared. So that's my first term. My next term, negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. Now if I had a to the 5th and I take away 3 a's, so think of it as a, that's a to the 5th divided by a cubed, and we cancel out what's alike, I'm left with an a squared. So your powers here you subtract on the letters when you divide. And then b divided by b, that cancels out. My plus sign is going to link my next term. 5 divided by 5 is 1. I'm not going to write my coefficient just yet because I want to see what else is left. A cubed, if I divide all a's out, there are no a's left over. And b squared, take away a b, I'm left with just a single b. And this is what it looks like now as factoring, not just dividing the 5a cubed, but this is what it looks like when you factor. Now for the next one here, I see 3 terms, and I see 1x squared, and so this is that one called a equals 1 factoring, and this is how you factor those. What you want to do is write a big X, and you're going to look at that number at the end, negative 14. We call this your C term. The 5 would be your B term, and the A here would be 1x squared. So what I want to do is write down that C term at the end, and then the middle term, 5, here at the bottom, and I'm going to look for 2 numbers that multiply to make negative 14. It's your A times C at the top. Well, 1 times negative 14 is negative 14. And the B term goes at the bottom, and you want to find 2 numbers that add to be the bottom but multiply to be the top. And then what your factors are going to look like is this. X times x is going to get you your x squared, but these 2 numbers that multiply to make negative 14 and at the same time add to make 5 are going to be the factor numbers that you see here. So I'm thinking a 7 and a negative 2. And those are my factors. So I'm just going to check this for you. If we were to multiply this out, we'd have x squared minus 2x plus 7x and minus 14, and those 4 terms will combine to make the trinomial that we started with. Okay, here's another one, And in this one, I notice I have 6a to the third, x squared, 6x squared. So what I'm gonna assume right now is that I might have an a greater than 1, but I also wanna check for, if I do have it, are all three of these numbers divisible by anything? And in fact, they are. So this is gonna have a GCF because I'm confident all three of these terms are at least divisible by a 3. So if I divide that 3 out, I'd be left with 2x squared plus 13x minus 7. And now what I'm going to do is, seeing that I have 3 terms and I have 2x squared, I'm going to factor this with my a greater than 1. And there's a couple methods that I taught in my classes. One of them was called the split the middle method, and so that's the one I'm going to do here. I also taught a box method, which I'm not going to do here. So when I'm looking at my trinomial that's left, I'm still going to use the big X that I had used in this previous problem. I'm going to take my a times my c, which is 2 times negative 7 or negative 14. My b term is going to go at the bottom, and I'm going to write down 2 numbers that multiply to make the top and add to make the bottom. Okay, so I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. And so split the middle means those 2 terms that we think of are going to split what used to be our 13x. So 2 numbers that multiply to make negative 14 and at the same time add to make 13, I'm going to use 14 and negative 1. So a 14x and a negative 1x will combine to make 13x, and so this is what the split the middle looks like. So that's why I got the 14 and the negative 1, because of this big X here that told me what those 2 numbers should be. And now that I have 4 terms, I'm going to factor with grouping. So my 2x squared and my 14x, those are both divisible by 2 and an x. So I'm going to divide out a 2 and an x, and then divide out a 2 and an x. Both of these are negative, so I'm going to take out a negative 1. So when this group and this group matches, that is one of your factor pairs. And then the GCF that you took out, here and here, come together to make your other factor, a 2x and a minus 1. Okay, now here's another one. 4x squared plus 5x minus 21. Numbers that 4 are divisible by would be 1, 4, and 2, and 5 is not divisible by any of those, and neither is 21. And so this will not have a GCF, it will just be an a greater than 1 because I have a 4x squared. And so I'm going to use my split the middle method. I'm going to take a times c for the top, and the b goes at the bottom, and I'm going to split my 5x into the 2 numbers that I find here. So a, which is my 4, and c, which is negative 21. Okay, 4 times negative 21. I get negative 84. And my 5 goes at the bottom. What I want to do is find 2 numbers that multiply to make negative 84. This is going to be a hard one. And add to make 5. Okay, so what goes into 84? I know 2 does. 2 and 42. How about 4? 4 and 21. I'm getting maybe closer. 84 divided by, let's try 6. 6 and 14. Let's try, is 84 divided by 12? 12 and 7? Oh, okay. If I have a positive 12 and a negative 7, that's going to multiply to make negative 84. And a 12 minus 7, when I add them together, I will get 5. So the 12 and the negative 7 are going to be my new middle terms. So instead I'll have 4x squared plus a 12x minus 7x and then minus 21. So this is why it's called split the middle. And then it turns into a grouping problem similar to what I had over here. So now what I want to do is take and find the GCF of the first 2 terms. Well, they're both divisible by 4 and an x. And I'm left with 1x plus here 3. Both of these have a GCF because, well, first they're both negative, and they're both divisible by 7. Negative 21 divided by negative 7 is positive 3, and the idea is to get these 2 factor pairs to match. So I have an x plus a 3 and a factor of 4x minus 7. All right, here we go. Next page, I have a few more left. In the top here, I see a 4 term. So this is going to be a grouping. So the GCF here that's in these two would be the letter X they both have in common. So we'll factor that out. The GCF in the next two terms is a negative because they're both negative, and they're also divisible by 5. Negative 5y divided by negative 5 is just the y. Negative 10 divided by negative 5 is a positive 2. And when these factor pairs match, that is one of your factor answers. And the other one is your GCFs that you took out that you put together. Okay, now in the next one I have 3 terms. I have 1x squared, and so this is my a equals 1 factoring. Now again, you're going to take your a times c and your b at the bottom. 1 times 18 is 18. Negative 11 goes at the bottom. What are 2 numbers that multiply to make 18 but add to make negative 11? So this is kind of a harder one because I want them to add to be a negative and multiply to be a positive. So both of these are going to need to be a negative, and it's going to be a 9 and a 2. Now the order of which you put these won't matter. So here you could have x minus 2 and an x minus 9. The order doesn't matter. And maybe I didn't address that as well as I could have on this previous problem. When you find these 2 numbers in your big X, the order of which you put these here could have been opposite, and you will still factor and get the same factors when you do your grouping. So I just maybe wanted to double check and hit on that you could have had negative 7 here and 12 here, and even if the order was switched, your factor pairs will just look slightly different, but in the end you will still get the same factors. Okay, now we have a couple more. I notice in this one here, all of my terms are even, and so I'm going to factor out a GCF of all of them of 2. So let's factor that out, and I'd be left with 1x squared minus 14x minus, let's double check my math. It's early in the morning for me, and I have not had my coffee yet. And so here we go, x squared minus 14x minus 49. And so now with my big X, I'm going to put my a times c at the top, my b at the bottom. My a just happens to be 1. 1 times negative 49 is negative 49. Negative 14 goes at the bottom. What 2 numbers multiply to make negative 49 and add to make negative 14? Well, the only numbers that multiply to make negative 49 are negative 7 and positive 7, or 49 and a negative 1, or a negative 49 and a positive 1. And so actually, as I'm looking at this, that none of these factor pairs are going to add to make negative 14. Now, if this had been a positive, then we could have used like negative 7 and negative 7, but that's not what our problem says. And so the only thing I'm actually going to be able to take out is a GCF. And it's because this sign here is really throwing me off. If it had been a positive, I could have done a negative 7 and a negative 7 to make the negative 49, but as it is, with a negative 7 and a positive 7 to multiply to make negative 49, that's not going to make negative 14. So the GCF is going to be all we can do. Now for this one over here, I have my a equal to 1. So again, my a times c goes at the top, which is going to be negative 15, and my b goes at the bottom. What 2 numbers multiply to make negative 15 and add to make positive 2? It's going to be a 5 and a negative 3. Now again, the order of what you write these in totally doesn't matter. You could have said a negative 3 and a positive 5, and so either way, those are correct factors. All right, we got 2 left. Hang in there, we're almost done. Here, my factor of 6. Factors would be 2 and 3, or 6 and 1, and 5 and 4 are both not divisible by those factors of 6. And so this is going to end up being just an a greater than 1. So with an a greater than 1, we're going to do what's called split the middle and turn it into a grouping problem. So my a times c, my a is 6, My B is negative 5, but C is negative 4. So A times C goes at the top, which is going to get me negative 24. My B goes at the bottom. What two numbers multiply to make negative 24 and add to make negative 5? How about a negative 8 and a positive 3? So a 6x squared. Now again, the order of what you put these in does not matter. So we're splitting our middle term into those two numbers here. So since it had an x, a 3x and a minus 8x will get us negative 5x. But the first term and the last term stay. And now we do a grouping with the 4 terms. So my GCF here is a 3x. And I'm left with 2x plus 1. Here, my GCF is going to be a negative 4. So I'm going to divide out the negative. I'll have a 2x, divide out the negative. Because these match, one of my answers is 2x plus 1. And then the other factor is the GCFs that come together, 3x and negative 4. Here I see 3 terms. Now I see that my A is greater than 1, but do you notice that your other numbers are also divisible by 3? So let's take out a GCF of 3 first. So take out our 3. Now I'm left with A equals 1, 1x squared. So it's a little easier than this problem because I don't have to split the middle. I can just plop those two numbers right in my factors. So A times C, 1 times 10 is 10. My B goes at the bottom. What two numbers multiply to make positive 10 and at the same time add to make negative 7? A negative 5 and a negative 2. So 3 was my factor from the beginning that I took out, that GCF, and then one factor gets a negative 5 and the other gets a negative 2, and we're all done.